Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Just so I have a good idea for our audience here, how many of you use mobile media and social media within your own districts or agencies? Okay, great. And how many of you are with fire departments or emergency operations centers that use NIMS? Okay. All right, we're going to be touching on all of those subjects here today, so if it's a little remedial for you, I apologize. I want to make sure that everyone has a full understanding for all the subjects since we are going to be touching on all of that. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you may have. I'm also joined here today with, and sorry to put you on the spotlight, Brad, but with a member of our HERT team. He also works in our Emergency Operations Center and our Departmental Operations Center. So if you have any further questions about San Diego County in particular, hopefully Brad can, he won't leave me out hanging dry. Okay, all right, let's get started here. The objective here today for this session is to provide you with ways to utilize social as well as mobile media in disaster response. This original presentation just touched on NIMS and social media, but I wanted to expand this a bit more to include smartphones and mobile media and what's happening in technology today in other agencies as well as in San Diego County, and some of the other technology that's coming down the pipeline either through private industry or other government agencies. This will be broken up into 3 parts. The first part will be an overview of NIMS as well as social media. The second will be an overview of the 2011 Southern California power outage. This is the last time our Emergency Operations Center was activated. And the third part is hands-on workshop. And what I wanted to go through here again is to talk about the future of OES, or Office of Emergency Services, and as well as mobile media. There's a lot of videos in this section. And we'll take a look at what some of the new technology is, and then hopefully we can get onto your smartphones and incorporate some of those new mobile apps, or at least guide you in the right direction as being able to implement some of this into your own agencies. How many people are here from private industry? All right, first let's talk about NIMS, and I think I saw a handful of hands that are that's familiar with NIMS, and that's part of the National Incident Management System. And this is produced by the Department of Homeland Security, and it emphasizes preparedness, communication and information management, resource management, command and management, as well as ongoing management and maintenance. It's a management system. The part that we want to focus on here right now today is command and management, and most specifically the incident command system, which how many of you are familiar with ICS? A good number of you have probably gone through the FEMA training courses online maybe, and maybe taken 300 and 400 the advanced courses as well. So for those of you who are not familiar with ICS, ICS was actually originally developed in the state of California back in the 1970s due to a series of catastrophic fires that impacted the urban and the wildlife interface. And it caused a lot of property damage as well as loss of life. And they found that through case studies that one of the primary reasons for some of the inadequate incident management rather, was one of the key reasons for some of this, for a lot of the property damage and the loss of life. So incident command system was born out of that, and that has since then been adopted by NIMS and brought into as a component of NIMS. Incident command system, what that in summary, in a very brief overview, is it's a standardized management tool that people use and fire departments use on a daily basis. I work for the Department of Environmental Health, and in hazmat, we use this, or I primarily have only used this in emergency situations or in planned events, whereas many agencies like fire departments use this on a daily basis. And what we've found in police departments, and what we have found that we need to have a common terminology and a common mode of communication so that we can communicate effectively. Communication is the number one issue that generally arises out of in disaster response or even planned events. You need to be able to speak the same language. It represents, the incident command system represents the best practices. Again, there was a number of case studies that happened in the 1970s, and then on throughout. There's incident debriefings after every incident to figure out what worked and what didn't work, and out of that is where ICS was born. And again, I touched on this briefly, but we use this in disaster response, but it can be used for any type of event. It could even be planned events, or large or small. Even when I'm working with group projects and such, or in small projects, I can use ICS in order to manage a situation. All right, the fundamental incident priorities, particularly in disaster response, are life safety, incident stabilization, and property and environment conservation. Okay, life safety, that's pretty straightforward. We want to protect any threats to the health of the public as well as our own responders. Incident stabilization, we want to target incidences or target specific situations that have high damage potential, are complex, have an ability to expand rapidly, and of course we want to protect our own infrastructure. Property and environment conservation, this used to be just property conservation, but now it's property environment and environment conservation. And we want to make sure that we manage any threat or potential for threats to property, environmental impact, and also, of course, our economic impact. This is a rough outline or an overview of an ICS hierarchy. And the incident commander is at the top, and below them are 7 sections. And ICS can be modular. You can pick and choose parts that apply to that are applicable to your situation or your disaster. So you might not need all 7 of these sections or 7 of these key positions. That's the PIO, the Public Information Officer, your Safety Officer, Liaison Officer. And then we have the operations sections, planning section, logistics section, and finance and admin. In smaller situations, you might be consolidating a lot of those. Or there might be one person that's wearing multiple hats. But this is, again, just a tool, a management tool that you can use. Under operations section, that's even broken out into further branches and divisions or groups. As well as the planning section. And planning and logistics and finance, well, all the sections will have to work with each other closely, but planning and logistics, actually I should say finance and logistics are working very, very closely together. Finance handles all the money. Logistics is doing basically the ordering. Planning is operating for the next operational period, and operations is your boots on the ground. Okay, let's talk a little bit about multiple and expanding incidences. We were talking about ICS, and ICS is we're talking about one situation or one incident, whereas there could be a situation much like the Southern California power outage where there could be multiple incidences or expanding incidences. And in a situation like that, you're going to need to have, or one option that you have available to you is the Unified Command, which is how we operate in San Diego County. Additionally, there's what's called MACS, Multi-Agency Coordination System. How many use MACS in their agencies? Okay, you'll be able to speak more to that if anyone has any questions to that. But multi-agency coordination systems provide support coordination for incident prioritization, critical resource allocation, communication, and information coordination. And then oftentimes you could be working out of an emergency operations center, which we also have out of our, in San Diego County, we have an OES, an Office of Emergency Services. And that's for the operational area, which is our county. The location, and this location, the EOC, is the location for coordination and information of resources. This is going to sound very familiar to MAC, similar to MAC, to support incident management and organized by major functional disciplines. So if you were to look at a map or a layout of our OCS, or OES rather, you'll see that it's broken up into several sections. There's fire, law enforcement, medical services, as well as different jurisdictions. There's representatives from the federal and the state level, as well as regional and tribal representatives as well. We also have representatives from the major utilities, so power, water, public works, and most importantly, and we're talking about how to use social media and mobile media in the event of a disaster, and so we also will be touching on the Joint Information Center, which is also coined as the JIC. The JIC is the location where personnel with public information responsibilities will perform a number of functions, which include critical emergency notifications out to the public, crisis communications within your agency, public information functions, as well as providing consistent messages out to the public as well. And this is, and we're going to talk a little bit about, a lot more about providing consistent messages. So I touched on this a little bit before, but information and communication are always the #1 issue, whether you're dealing with a planned event or in disaster response in an emergency situation. And that goes all throughout, and it gets more and more complicated the more people that you incorporate in. So in a smaller event where you might just have emergency EMS, emergency communications, and law enforcement, and fire, to expanding events where you're incorporating in NGOs, public works, social services, the further you reach out for other resources, the greater your potential is for having informational and communication issues. And this is where social media can come in and work to your advantage. But you have to be careful with how you use social media, because this could also get you in a lot of hot water very quickly. So, social media. Wikipedia defines social media as web-based and mobile-based technology, which are used in turn to communication and to interactive dialogue amongst organizations, communities, and individuals. It's also defined as a group of internet-based applications that allow for creation and exchange of user-generated content. And user-generated content, I'm emphasizing that where the internet first came out, it was just a one-way street where information can be pushed out to people. But now we're finding with mobile technology is that can very much be a two-way avenue where we can actually rely on the public to provide us with information as well. The big problem there is it fact or is it fiction? How real is that data? I hate the saying, but I can't think of a more appropriate, but it's trust but verify. You want to bring in you want to get the information, but you want to verify to make sure it's true before you actually act on that. Web 2.0 is another term that is used for using user-generated content or relying on your public. So I have a 5-minute video clip here. This is a video put out by an organization called Socialnomics, and it really brings into sharp focus the utilization of social media and how important this is in our communication. So I like the music in that video, but then I also really like a lot of the statistics that are actually available in there. One of the statistics in there is that magazines are really coming out of print now. All of that is available on your Kindle or on your iPad. And 60 million posts on Facebook daily. I mean, this is I know I check my social media websites on a daily basis, but not just for personal use, but also for business use as well. And that's where you could really reach out to a whole nother level of, I wouldn't say just people, just generations. I mean, there's so many more people that are available to you through social media and at a much faster pace. Okay, this is what the social media landscape looks like. I mean, there's dozens of social media websites that are available for you out there. When I look up the top 10 social media websites, there's actually only half of them are American or English. A lot of them are actually worldwide. Twitter, I focused on Twitter there because I'll touch on that in particular to our 2011 power outage and how valuable Twitter really was for us in that particular situation. And social media versus mass media. I want to make one clarification right off the bat. Social media is not a replacement to your traditional mass media outreach. You're still going to need to hold your press conferences, and you'll still need to have your interviews and press releases. But it is a very effective complement to your existing media outlets. And it's a way to reach active, quote-unquote, plugged-in residents. And in a situation like our 2011 power outage, most people really relied on social media to be able to communicate with each other and watch the major news feeds to make sure that they stayed on top of the situation. And NIMS and social media. The 5 things that I really want to convey to you is 1, information discipline. When it's like the boy who cried wolf. If you're constantly sending out a large amount of information, people are going to become desensitized to what you're having to say. So when you need to convey valuable information, they may or may not get that message. So you need to have discipline as to what sort of messages you're putting out there and is it really useful. Following protocol and chain of command, this is very important. To bring up a recent tragedy, Sandy Hook, that was a situation where the media got a lot of misinformation and facts that they did not verify, and it led to damaging a lot of other lives for people that weren't necessarily related to the incident. And following the protocol and chain of command is particularly important because I think a lot of that misinformation came from people that weren't necessarily following the chain of command. And I mentioned the Joint Operation or Joint Information Center. It's really important, especially in a large-scale incident, that you're following your chain of command and making sure that it's going through one media portlet, or one outlet that's managing all of that. If you call your cousin in Texas and tell them some valuable piece of information and we play the telephone game, that information might get distorted down the line and may actually hurt you more than help you. A unified and consistent message is imperative. I told you that in San Diego County we have a departmental operations center, which is managed by our Department of Environmental Health, but then there's also the Emergency Operations Center. If the DOC, in our case, if the DOC is putting out different information than the EOC, that's going to cause a lot of confusion for our residents, and we want to make sure that we're putting out the same exact information so that we get the most effective mode of communication with our residents. Another thing to note is reporters commonly scan the internet for information. I'm going to show you one of the tools here that I use is Google Alerts. They get alerts on key terms that will keep them up to date with the latest information. So they're constantly scanning the internet for information, and if you have the resources, I encourage you to do it as well. Particularly in 2011, sometimes I would get the information more quickly through Twitter from our JIC than actually going next door and talking to them. So it's something that can help keep you on top of a situation and also work to your advantage. And also hopefully be able to preemptively handle a situation that might be from misinformation, if you will, from the reporters or from the public. The picture that you're seeing right here is actually from the U.S. Airways Flight 1549. And the very first photo and the very first information that we got from that incident when that plane landed in the Hudson was actually via Twitter. And the first announcement came from a Twitter feed. Someone had actually snapped a picture of this plane, put it out on Twitter, and that's how we found out about it. That's how the reporters found out about it. That's how the emergency operations found out about it. It was all through social media. One of the tools that I wanted to show you here is Google Alerts. Google's, YouTube, I think it said, was the second largest search engine on the internet. Google is the first. And I think YouTube is actually owned by Google. This is a feature that it's not a commonly known about feature, but Google has alerts that you can search in, put in keywords, and query to monitor a developing news story. Or if you want to keep current on a specific industry, if you, say, for example, specialize in APSA or USTs, I mean, this is something that you can put in a query for and get weekly updates or daily updates, hourly updates, monthly updates. It helps keep you at least in touch with what is being circulated out there and whether or not you can filter out whether or not that's either fact or fiction. I wanted to give you a quick little quiz here to see what level of understanding most of us have, or most of the people in this room have, as far as the different modes of social media. In the social media landscape, I showed you pictures of dozens of different social media portlets. A lot of those are international, but the ones that are most common here, we'll start out from easy to more difficult. Here's an easy one. Does anyone recognize that icon? YouTube. Okay, great. How about that? LinkedIn. Google Plus. So we're getting a little bit more difficult here. Google Plus has actually kind of gone the way of Facebook, and you're able to communicate with circles or groups, much like Facebook does. Yelp? Yeah. So I think 14% in the video, 14% of the people actually only rely on commercials for advertisement, but a lot of people, 78% I think, rely on peer reviews. And I know when I'm looking for a good restaurant, or if I'm looking for a good mechanic or something, I'll go and check out their Yelp review first and see how other people have rated them. Instagram. So this is a share. Yeah, I think I heard someone say it. This isn't actually a site per se, but it's an icon that's commonly used with a lot of websites, in that if you want to share the information via other social media portlets or via email, this is the icon that you'll look for. Flickr. So Pinterest. This is one that I've recently just discovered, actually, and it's like an internet board, cork board, if you will. So if I'm looking at re-landscaping my backyard, and I want to see what some of the new ideas are out there on drought tolerant or low water gardens, I can go on there and see what's being circulated. What are some of the good ideas that people are putting out there? I haven't heard of this one previously. Dribble? This is Picasa. This is a component of Google as well. This is much like Flickr. This is a network-based photo album that you can share. Skype. This is a video conferencing free. That's the amazing part. It's a free video conferencing software, or a site rather. Blogger. RSS feeds. How many of you are familiar with RSS feeds? A few people. Photo Bucket. I'm actually blanking on this one right now. I threw this in there. This is a tough one. I think this was one of the international ones. Okay, so those are, I think a good proportion of you were able to identify the different social media outlets, or at least the most common ones. Realistically speaking, I think there's probably only about 2 or 3 that are used on a regular basis, particularly by government agencies, and that's predominantly going to be Twitter or Facebook. Okay, so I want to talk about the 2011 Southern California power outage. All right, so September 8th, 2011, this was the last time that we had a full activation of our Emergency Operations Center in the county. This was due to a catastrophic loss of power to all of Southern California as well as parts of Arizona and northern Mexico. The really unfortunate part was this happened right at peak rush hour, or right as it was starting. And a lot of our field inspectors were trying to come back into the office at this point. And this is when the emergency unfolded. It happened very quickly. At that point, when we realized that it was actually a loss of power to the entire county, we activated our county emergency operations center, and that also activated our Departmental of Environmental Health departmental operations center. And there's 3 levels of activation. Number 1 is just a management watch, and what happens there is our hazardous incident response team, as well as the EOC, will watch a situation to see if it's going to escalate, or if it's a situation that we're going to require either a partial or a full activation. A partial activation brings in our policy department and maybe bring in some key personnel to manage or to watch a situation to see if we need to bring in all of our resources at that point, which is a full activation. And internally, how we manage our emergencies is through a portlet that we call Web EOC. And this is used to manage the incident as well as all of the operations that go on at the Emergency Operations Center as well. And particularly in this case, we want to point out that our servers, this is all web-based. And so this is accessible to our emergency operations staff wherever they may be, whether they're at home, whether they're in the office, or even if they're in another state. They can watch and observe a situation and manage a situation from wherever they are. The key point in this particular incident is that we have 2 redundant servers in multiple locations out of state. And the key to that is because the power outage happened across all of San Diego County as well as other jurisdictions, that was a key component, because had we only had 1 server, or had our servers been in the county that we're trying to protect, we would have been at a loss because we wouldn't have been able to manage the situation. The other thing that we learned in this particular incident was that the only TV and radio station that we had available to us was our emergency radio station. None of the other networks or radio stations were able to broadcast. They didn't have any backup generators. And texting was found to be much more reliable than cell service. The reason being is when you have an open line and a phone call, that takes up a much greater bandwidth than in text, which is just a short blast of information that you're sending out. And we found that that was the most effective way to communicate with our field staff and get them back safely or send them home. SDG&E, County of San Diego, as well as the Department of Environmental Health, we found that because people couldn't watch TV and because they couldn't listen to the radio, we found that they really were relying heavily on their mobile phones and social media to figure out what was going on with the county. And as such, we responded by constantly updating our websites, our Facebook, and our Twitter feeds. The entire incident duration was 12 hours. It was a short incident. Okay, social media allowed us to interact directly with the public. Without power, Twitter became our main source of information and was more immediate than Facebook or even the county website. With the county website, we have to go through the development site, and there's a public publishing process. I mean, it's a lot more arduous, whereas with Twitter, it's the Twitter founders, just when asked why they called it Twitter, they said that they called it Twitter because it was meant to be short bursts of information, inconsequential bursts of information, like tweets from birds. And that's why they coined it as Twitter, and that's why they call it tweets. I mean, it's a very limited character amount. I think something like 132 characters that you can compose in one tweet. And county communication received many tweets from the public asking for specific information, because this was the most immediate way that they could get information, the quickest way that we can get information out, instead of having to deal with website software or even with Facebook. This was a snapshot of our county's Twitter account. I'm highlighting 3 components here that were actually specifically related to our Department of Environmental Health, and the primary concerns here were water quality.
The county's Emergency Operations Center goes into action following the big power outage. While the blackout was not a disaster, experts say it was a great lesson in disaster response. The outage wiped out power countywide for 12 hours. All the major players were at the Emergency Operations Center to make sure residents were safe.
The County of San Diego proclaimed a local emergency this afternoon, which gives a greater flexibility and gives us the resources to respond to this situation.
Law enforcement is out there. We ask you to only call 911 in emergency situations. Try to stay off your cell phones. I'm sure you're getting calls from relatives around the country and want to know what's going on. Try to keep those cell lines open for real emergency calls. It'll help out all the public safety, and it'll help out all of us here and our neighbors in San Diego County.
One of the things that we are also doing and working very closely with the county on is looking at our life support customers and life support residents throughout the county. Very important that we have contact with them. So working with the county, we have cross-referenced our lists of those customers, and we are calling those customers and making sure that they're okay.
The county also made extensive use of social media since many TV and radio stations were off the air. Smartphones were able to receive frequent tweets and Facebook posts from county social media sites. For CTN.org, I'm Michael Russo.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the major environmental health issues that happened during the event here. We had 3 major sewage spills. And in total, it was roughly around 6 million gallons of sewage that was spilt. And we needed to convey that information to our public so that we could also issue boil water orders and keep them out of the beaches and bays. We also had a loss of water pressure to portions of San Diego County, and that was primarily due to the fact that there were no backup generators at several of the pump stations, 49 of the pump stations throughout the county. And that affected 10 communities and 753 permitted food facilities. Due to the power outage, there's a lot of businesses that closed anyway, but we wanted to make sure that those food facilities in particular were aware of the situation with the water quality, or the compromise, rather, to the quality of water that they may have had. And we also issued boiled water advisories throughout 3 days, the day September 8th, which is the day of the event, as well as the following 3 days. Department of Environmental Health also issued several mass notifications. This is through Alert San Diego, which is also our reverse 911. reverse 911 program. And then we also contacted over 11,000 rather, food facilities, 2,600 swimming pools. We opened up a food bank a phone bank, a phone bank for people to call in for more information, as well as posted on our Facebook and Twitter accounts information on the boil water advisories, proper food storage, pool closures, as well as our beach and bay closures. Okay, the number of tweets during the blackout. Of all of the San Diego County accounts, we had 157 tweets. SDG&E had 142. San Diego County COSD, the county communications, had 123. And then the following news networks also had a number of tweets as well. We found that over 400 were retweets or mentions to the 3 county Twitter accounts. And the reason I mention that is because this is exactly how social media is designed. When we send out information, our hope is that the other information, or that information, is spread to other members of the public through retweets or rebroadcasts or reposts rather. And if 400 of those people just reach out to 10 more people, then that's 4,000 people that we were able to impact, or at least get the information out there. Over that day of the event and the day after, County of San Diego gained 2,300 followers that monitored our Twitter account. And people were discovering that County of San Diego was a great resource, a valuable resource for information on the disaster. And it started subscribing to us for their status updates. If you establish yourself as a valuable resource to the community, then they're going to look to you in future disasters as well. Some of the tweets that we received from followers, one of which is the North County Transit, and I point this one out in particular because our businesses were also relying on us for information, and they were able to plan their services for the following day according to the information that we were able to put out, as well as keeping members of the public, our own residents, and people that are outside of our county reassured that the situation was being handled in an appropriate manner, and that at this time, the safety of our residents was not compromised. Let's talk about the future of OES. So what the county is doing now, after this incident, they really focused a lot on leveraging Web 2.0, which is the user-driven content. And that's through Twitter and Facebook and RSS feeds, and what we call dynamic GIS mapping and proximity mapping. There's new apps that are out there that can actually, you can upload information based off of your location, but then also other members or other people that are following that feed can draw from that information based off of your current location. County of San Diego also has 3 emergency portals that were recently developed, focusing on preparedness, response, and recovery. And late last year, we launched a mobile smartphone application, and that also provides push notification for the latest news. This was not a feature that was available to us in 2011, but it's definitely one that I think a lot of subscribers will utilize in the event of a future disaster. And this also uses GIS reporting and proximity mapping. We also have a study being conducted with the Naval Postgraduate School exercise on testing mobile applications for damage assessment and crowdsourcing. This is an advertisement for our new mobile app. So at the conclusion of this presentation, I'm going to walk through a lot of these mobile apps with you. I'm going to touch on them very briefly, but then if you have your smartphones with you, we'll explore a lot of these in more detail, particularly the County of San Diego's. So some of the other public information apps that are available, there's ones that are available through FEMA. Red Cross has specialized ones for hurricane, for first aid, earthquake, and wildfires. And for hazmaters out there, there's several resources that are also available for hazmat. And one that I just recently downloaded that sends you alerts on hazmat incidences that's as pertaining to the DOT. This next video here is a video that's published by the Red Cross, emphasizing some of the work that they're currently doing with Dell computers.
More and more Americans are using the social web during emergencies. And their expectations of how responders use these tools are growing. The American Red Cross will now be even more present in online communities with the help of its new Digital Operations Center powered by Dell. So how will it work? During disasters, the Red Cross and its digital volunteers will now be better equipped to listen to online communities. So when emergencies inevitably arise, we can connect communities with our digital volunteers and share life-saving safety and preparedness information. The social data the Red Cross collects will also...
All right, so the applications that we just discussed here were with FEMA and with Red Cross and even with the County of San Diego. That's predominantly all information that's available to our public, that we're pushing out to the public for them to be able to stay informed. But there's also applications that are currently in development and that we're using now that we can use for our own internal use. So I touched briefly on our Alert San Diego, our reverse 911 distribution. But what we also have now is, we're actually replacing that now, is Blackboard Connect. How many of you are familiar with Blackboard? So Blackboard actually is something that started out more in the university system and has enabled online courses and a digital media for students to stay connected with their classes. Now, they have since then branched out and now incorporated apps available for emergency response. So County of San Diego is using Blackboard Connect right now just to be able to communicate with our own internal staff. And this is something that we can use mobily on our phones as well. We can use it on the computer, of course, but I can also send a message through my smartphone application as an outreach campaign or emergency blast notification to all of our staff. We talked about in the 2011 power outage that texting was the most efficient way, but Blackboard Connect in this situation enables us to send a blast media campaign out to all of our field staff through texting, through phone messages, through email, all at once from one location. So I want to talk a little bit about where this could potentially work, or how this can be applied in the future, or hopefully where I'm hoping this is the direction that we're going to go. We talked about incident command and ICS in quite some detail here. And if we had actually a mobile app that would enable an incident commander out in the field to be able to manage the incident on their mobile application so that the EOC or a map can actually monitor that situation and provide resources, then that's powerful. That's a powerful tool that he can use or they can use in the field and be able to communicate with home base. So for example, in the previous slide here, we have the four main components of ICS: operations, planning, logistics, and finance. Well, if we looked at a mobile application and was able to outline our mobile application to mimic that of an ICS program, And say, for example, in planning and logistics portion of that mobile app, we could also look at what the current and the future incident action plan is, and look at what the most up-to-date situational status reports are, or what the previous status reports were, what the current existing resource requests are, or if I wanted to make a resource request, I need a couple of dump trucks out here, then I could be able to do that on my smartphone. I mean, that's a very powerful tool that an incident commander or a planning chief or a section chief could really use. Right now, that's all done on paper forms, or even on in our case, the web EOC, perhaps. But if that were available on their phone, then they might not necessarily need their computers, and they can manage the situation anywhere. Or if they wanted to look up documentation or start planning for demobilization, all of that could be available. And this is where I'm really hoping that ICS and mobile media can really come together. I have a couple more links that I want to show you on technology that's being developed in the private industry that is also helping disaster response. In particular, this is through Verizon, and they're coming up with a new technology that fire departments and EMS can use.
Using cloud computing and mobile technology, Verizon innovators have developed a projective display for firefighters,
Access to the first stairwell.
allowing them to see through anything.
South side of the building.
Because the world's biggest challenges deserve even bigger solutions. Powerful answers. Verizon.
Accidents happen. But when kids are involved, it's comforting to know responders have the tools they need that can make the difference.
You're responding on a priority 2 motor vehicle accident.
The big advantage of mobile health, or mHealth, is that the care starts earlier, right at the curbside where the accident.
I know in these situations, in these commercials, they're commercials, right? They're advertisements for Verizon. And it paints everything in a very, very pretty light, basically. And I understand in an emergency situation, things might not move that slowly or move that quickly, and may actually move much slower. But what really excites me about this new industry, and what really excites me, is the potential and in the direction that it's going. We're so much further advanced today than we were 20 years ago, and if we continue to improve, then we can only get better. And the fact that the companies are actually thinking along these lines in disaster response, I mean, these aren't potentially huge money-making ideas where they can reach out to the public per se, but they're doing this for the betterment for emergency response. You know, that's exciting. I'm glad that they're thinking about these opportunities. The last video here is actually from a company based out of the UK. There aren't a whole lot of companies that are focusing on really leveraging mobile media and mobile technology with disaster response that is not part of the mobile network, meaning Verizon or AT&T. This is a private company that's based out of the UK. And it looks like it's just like a two-man group that's part of this, but they've as far as painting the picture and how this could really work for us in emergency response. So one of the things that we learned in the 2011 power outage is that most of the TV and radio networks didn't have backup generators. They could not broadcast, with the exception of our emergency response, our emergency radio station. But what we do is we conduct inspections of underground storage tanks and generators for our mobile cell sites. They do run on backup generators, and so that is a reliable network that we can draw from in the event of an emergency. Emergency response or disaster-related applications on your phones currently. And can you name off a couple of the ones that you guys have?
We got Blackboard Connect and WebEOC, and then the San Diego Emergency website.
You have WebEOC on your. They have a mobile app. San Diego County. Okay, yes. Okay. But Blackboard Connect. Blackboard Connect, that's a really powerful one. Anybody else? What are some of the other ones that are out there? Brad?
WebEOC, yeah.
Alert OC. Okay, so you have your own mobile app as well. Okay, and what sort of information do you have on there?
I don't use it too often.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at it. Brad, what do you have?
Just on the tech website, got Wiser, open link to the Hazmat Genium database collection, the ERG guide, the NIOSH Pocket guide. So you can keep going on a lot of
All right, we can put together a list for people if they want references at the end, or we can even look at some of them here. Anybody else? Ones that haven't been mentioned yet? Okay, all right. Let me share with you a couple of the ones that we use. Someone else mentioned Blackboard Connect. Okay, this is what Blackboard Connect is. And Blackboard Connect right now, again, we currently use just for our internal personnel. But let me log into my account and I can show you what I can do right now. So right now I want to send a new message as an outreach campaign, all right? And there's two different campaigns. There's outreach and emergency. So depending on the type of information or the type of communication settings that people have put in here. So for example, my profile in here, I have my cell phone, which has texting capability, I have my email address, and then I would have my home phone on here. So in an emergency campaign, that would send out information to all of my modes of communication. Whereas an outreach campaign, it will go through a priority list until it actually hits somebody or it gets a live voice or gets a connection per se. So in this case, I'm just going to do an outreach campaign. Now I'm going to add a group, and I have created an iPhone test group. So the the desktop application of Blackboard Connect, I can actually select specific individuals. Unfortunately, when you're using the mobile application, you can't do that. You can either just send it to all contacts or to specific groups. So I don't necessarily want to communicate with my director right now, so I'm just going to send it to my test group. Okay, and this is where you would put in my test message. I'm on my iPad right now. This is the same as the phone app. Okay, so I can also do text-to-speech, where a digital voice will actually read off what I just typed out. And I can copy. That was the title of my message that I was previously typing in, but I'll type in, this is the actual message itself. And then the email, I can copy from the phone script, and the text message, I can copy from the email script. I have 2 contacts that are in my test group, and send. I have to set a date and time, sorry, we'll say right now. Okay, so in a real life situation, what I would have just done then is actually contacted all of our field staff. There's a countywide power outage, please return to the office, or contact your supervisor if you can't, text your supervisor if you can't come back. I mean, there's lots of information on just information that you can send out just from your mobile phone or a mobile application. I'll be able to pull up the text message, the text message will reach my cell phone. And which county are you from that you're using Blackboard Connect right now? San Diego, National City. Oh, you're with National City. Okay. Any other counties that are currently using Blackboard Connect or some form of a reverse distribution or reverse alerts? No? Okay. Well, and how do you contact your field staff or your personnel right now? Just on the phone? Radios. Emails? Okay. So this is just a new way of, you might not necessarily have the manpower or the resources to have somebody direct dialing everybody to contact them or doing a phone tree per se. This is a quick and easy way to get in contact with all your field staff. Okay, so let's take a look at our San Diego County mobile website here that we have. And this is, we have our Ready San Diego, which is one website, and then we have our emergency. So let's take a look at Ready San Diego, and this is what we have out for our public right now, where we can help them prepare, plan, and prepare for disasters. And in here we have it divided up into the different types of disasters. Let's take a look at earthquakes. And this is just useful information on what they need to do in order to prepare for a disaster, or in this case, an earthquake. Make an emergency kit, know where your safe spots are in each room and where to go when the shaking starts, for example. Know where the danger spots are. And evacuation plans, etc. There's a wealth of information here. Power outage. Flashlights, keep your refrigerator and freezer doors closed, just basic information that's available for people to help prepare. In emergencies, there's probably not a whole lot of information right now, but if we were actually in an emergency, what we would be able to do, or what County OES would do, is put up an emergency map to see where the fires are, or where the trouble situations are that people want to avoid during the situation, where all the shelters are in the county. Depending on where the location of or where the incident is, for example, wildfires, we might have shelters that are located for animals at our Del Mar fairgrounds, for example. Or for people, we'll have it at a local high school, and they'll be able to pull up the local shelter information. The latest news, this is what we were talking about as far as push notifications too. If we were putting out any news feeds regarding boil water advisories, beach and bay closures, all of that information would be put into our latest news, and people could bring that information up. Get involved. During a disaster, a lot of people want to volunteer, and having people just show up at our shelters isn't exactly useful. It could actually they could get in the way more than help us. And so if people want to get involved, this gives them a forum to basically sign up, and we can call on their services should we need them. And social media, these are the different social media portlets that we have available in San Diego, and this is just County OES. This is not Department of Environmental Health. We have our own social media networks as well. Now, if you are managing kind of like the County of San Diego, in that we have the primary messages that are going out by OES and the Joint Information Center, we want to make sure in DEH, or in the Departmental Operations Center, that we're monitoring what they're putting out there to the public, because we want to make sure what we put out as DEH DOC does not contradict what the EOC is putting out there. If the EOC is saying boil water, all residents in Carmel Valley and Rancho Penasquitos need to boil their water, and we're just saying Carmel Valley, that's going to cause a lot of confusion for people that are in Rancho Penasquitos. So we want to make sure that we monitor our own internal sites as well as the public information sites. There's additional resources in here on how to make a plan, building an emergency kit, and how to stay informed. And signing up for Alert San Diego, that was again our reverse 911 phone call, where you can sign either your home phone or your personal cell phone to receive a phone call should we decide to call you in the event of an emergency. When this was developed, this had not yet been operational during the 2011 power outage. So it'll be really interesting to see how this new feature actually works in an actual disaster. Not that I'm hoping for one, but it'll be interesting. FEMA has something similar on basically focusing on preparedness. They don't have. It's a similar information as far as how to prepare for a disaster, what's in your emergency kit list, where can you set up your meeting locations either for your personnel or for your families. Maps are available here for shelters. But this is on a national level, okay? NGOs such as the Red Cross, and I just downloaded the earthquake one. Red Cross also has applications for wildfires, how to prepare for wildfires, also with hurricanes, depending on which part of the country you're in. This is for their earthquakes, and again, they provide valuable information on what to do during an earthquake. Where are the safest places for you to hide, what to do right afterwards. Maybe it's turn off your gas, or make sure that your refrigerators and your freezer doors are closed. Check to make sure everyone's okay. They also have these tests in here. After you've taken the tutorials and read through the information, you can test your own knowledge and your level of preparedness as well. I actually think of the different mobile apps that are available, Red Cross probably has the most user-friendly, and really encourages useful knowledge, or retaining the information that you've learned. I mean, they have it available for you here too, but the pre and post tests are very helpful. Okay, Brad was talking also about reference documents that are available out there for you. So You have this one? Okay. Do you want to navigate through this one, Brad? Because I don't use this on a regular basis.
Come on up, Brad. This interface looks a little different than the one I'm using, but
Okay.
give it a whirl.
Okay.
Wiser has got a variety of technical reference, mostly for radiological, biological, and primarily chemical. So if you have a known substance, you can just select the known substance, and then you're able to search for that known substance based upon the chemical name or based upon the CAS number. So just searching for known substances, we're looking for chlorine. And it starts to really narrow that down. You come right in on the chemical that you want. My big fat fingers there. And this particular interface here for this application is more driven, you can see, to be web friendly as opposed to what you might find that you would be using out on the website. The one thing that you do have to do with Wiser is you do have to spend some time practicing with it a little bit, because a lot of the information is bedded down in the tree information here. So as I click on some of these different tabs, you can see it's somewhat limited in the information that it's giving me. But I just need to keep going on down the list until I'm starting to find what I'm interested in. And you guys know for chemical emergency response, there can be a whole wide range of applications. You may want to know the ionization potential of the material. Can I see it with a photoionization detector? You may have had a release, and we all know how to find our TWAs and our PELs and those exposure limits for the workers. But one of our primary concerns may also be the exposure levels that would be there for the public. And for those, we're going to start looking up things like the AGIL levels, the ERG levels that could be out there to do that. And within here, they're embedded in here. Another nice thing that they do here, I'll see if this can actually find us, it might zoom in, is this is also linked into the ERG guides protective distances tables that are in the back of the ERG guide. So if you have a small release, which is generally 55 gallons or less, or a larger release, which is larger, it can automatically map it down onto the map with a given wind direction that you have. It's real quick and dirty, it's real nice for first responders, and it certainly beats having to break out something like Aloha and start putting in all those parameters there, because you do have to make a lot of assumptions when you start to do that. So. But this is definitely for free. It's from the National Institute of Health, I think it is, and it's probably one of the most comprehensive. The only criticism I do have of this is looking down into all of these different trees to find everything. And what I was looking for before, I'm still kind of looking for it, and that's going to be the AGILs, just for example. So for chlorine, we can see that these AGIL levels here, this may be real tough to see, are a lot lower for the general public than it would be for a worker that you would allow to go back into. So this is definitely, I think, a free app. Download it, have it on your machine at all times. And it's getting better. Also, back on the home page, I'm just going to back up a little bit. WMDs. There we go. They've got some stuff on WMDs here. On the web version, for sure, they've got a nice selection of tools for radiation, showing you half-lives of things, what types of emitters that are coming out of these different isotopes that you may have. So it's a great tool.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, and that's the thing. Right now, I'm going off of an iPad right here, which is also very similar to what would be available to you on an iPhone. But a lot of the applications are not free, to Hosty's point. So Wiser, which is the one that Brad just talked about, is free. However, the California Health and Safety Code, I believe this was 20 to 10-ish. Most of the applications are $20 or less. So depending on if you have a work phone, you might have to get, obviously, purchase approval for that, or a personal phone, you're just going to have to make the investment. Yes?
Does that include updates on that app on the health and safety?
Yes. Yes. And you'll get notifications as updates become available. And you can look under info to see when the last update was. Oh, not for a while, 2010. Okay, what are some of the other applications that other people may have come across that they'd like to share? Anything else? Okay, this is a new one that I just found. This is also a free app. It's called Incidences. And what this does is actually tracks Department of Transportation and uploads any information regarding current hazmat spills or incidences along our roadways and our freeways. And also gives you references to some of the other apps that are available through this company, such as the Hazmat Reference Guide and ERG, and the NIOSH Pocket Guide, which both were ones that Brad had mentioned. So I'm a little curious as to what what you're currently using in your, as far as social media and mobile media in your agencies. Would anyone like to share? Facebook or Twitter? How many people are using Twitter right now to communicate with the public? National City you're from? Contra Costa County? Anybody else using Twitter or Facebook right now? Do you get any statistics as to what sort of numbers or how many followers you have? Okay. Okay. That's also a useful tool as far as being able to track exactly how much your progress and how much outreach that you need to do in order to get the word out there. In the case of 2011, our biggest surge of followers was because of an incident and because of a disaster, and people found that we were, through word of mouth, that we were a valuable resource to gain up-to-the-minute information. So unfortunately, unless there is a disaster, there isn't a huge press or need to subscribe per se. But it is a good idea to see what sort of response you're getting from the public. Yes?
Marlene, as far as how much of your regulated community follows you guys on Facebook? And do you guys have an idea of how much regulated facilities?
It's really hard to tell because most often, if I had a business, say Arco, for example, they might not necessarily be following us as Arco. It might be a station owner. So I can't it might be, Bob Jones that owns one of the stations. So it's really hard to collect that kind of information because Facebook doesn't track that information per se. There probably is a way if, they've populated all of their employment history or information like that, but that's tough. We don't make it part of our routine when we're dealing with our businesses to encourage them to sign up for it. But we do, whenever we do PSAs or media campaigns or posts, press releases and whatnot, we do encourage that they follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I think most people just assume that because we're putting out press releases that they're going to get the information that way, but they don't quite realize that it's actually much more efficient and much faster, and they get the information a lot quicker when they do follow us through social media websites. In San Diego, we recently, within the past year, incorporated mobile devices. So all of our field inspectors now have tablets that we can take out into the field to do our field inspections. With technology comes new headaches. So there's always kinks that have to be worked out there. But in an ideal world, much like those Verizon commercials, we hope that we can just go through and do a mobile inspection and be able to track the violations. That's a long way down the line, but at least we can start thinking about what we can incorporate into our own businesses and our own agencies. Anyone else using mobile devices out in the field, either for emergency response or for inspections? Yes? You do? You have for your field inspectors? Okay. I saw another hand. And where are you from?
Santa Clara County Fire.
Okay.
We're just starting with beta testing the inspection program now.
Okay.
We want to been tasked to start putting all this together. So don't steal your ideas.
Oh, good. I hope you do. That's really, I think the beauty of doing a session like this is because I want to see what's out there and what some of the other agencies are doing, but also be able to network and brainstorm as far as what the needs are. Obviously, we know what we need in San Diego County, but what we need might be very different from what Santa Clara needs. for example. But I was particularly excited about the Verizon communication or Verizon new endeavors, particularly with firefighters. I mean, do you think that that's something that you would actually use with their commercial and being able to use cloud computing and mobile technology to basically map out a building for exits?
Similar to that now.
Okay.
Verizon product.
Okay.
But yeah, that stuff's already in use.
Okay.
But it's progressing very quickly compared to where we were 10 years ago. It was unheard of, and now it's coming along.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Good. Okay, I don't have anything else, but if you'd like to walk through the any of the other applications or want to explore some more, I'm happy to stay with you after class. Thank you very much.